Hi, my name's David, and today I'm going to be facilitating a game of Kingdom by Ben Robbins um, for the Gauntlet Hangouts. If you're not aware of what the the Gauntlet is, it's a an online role-playing community. Can be found at www.gauntlet-rpg.com. Hopefully, but I'll put a link down in the below anyway. Um, so, brief introduction to Kingdom. It's a GM-less role-playing game about playing inhabitants of a kingdom and who are facing challenges to the kingdom, and how we adapt and uh, either weather the storm or don't. So for the game today, we just had a bit of a chat off camera. We are going to be playing the crew of the pirate ship Rubicon, terror of the Caribbean in the golden age of piracy. So there's a sort of slight on-the-fly hack of the HMS Rubicon playset in the Kingdom core book. I will we'll go around, introduce ourselves and our characters, give the brief pricing on those, and then we'll get to playing. So yeah, as I said, my name's David. I'm based in Sheffield here in the UK. My character today is Hernandez, the sailing master aboard the Rubicon. So Hernandez is a new recruit onto the Rubicon. He used to crew the on the last ship that the Rubicon raided. He voluntarily came aboard and joined the crew. He's currently facing some issues with sort of integrating with the crew. There's a certain lack of trust of him. He's still a bit worried that everyone's going to end up hanged for their piratical actions, but he is currently trying to get ingratiate himself with the crew. In particular, he's trying to impress one of the other characters by the name of Hopper, who he hopes will sort of get him in with the crew. I am starting the game in the role of perspective, which means that I can kind of see what will happen to the Rubicon in future, and how the decisions we make might affect the crew and the ship. Next event, I'll go to Ben. If you could introduce Hopper to us, please, and yourself, of course.
Sure. So my name's Ben, and today I'm going to be playing Hopper, who is the quartermaster of the ship. Hopper is, I think, a younger pirate, very charismatic, well liked by the crew, has always wanted to be a pirate, but due to an unfortunate fear of drowning, he hasn't really been able to find a place on the deck of the ship, so it just kind of came to him to be the quartermaster. I will be playing the role of Touchstone. Hopper is very much in touch with the desires of the crew, just by being around for mealtime, talking with people, just being a friendly face that people like to tell their hopes and dreams to. And Hopper has a particular relationship with Alder, the ship's surgeon, who he just treats like a normal person, which is kind of something Alder doesn't get very often.
Cool, thanks. And yeah, Peter, if you could introduce Alder next.
Sure thing. So, hi, I'm Peter, and so the character I'm going to be playing today is Alder. He's the ship's surgeon. He is a pirate, but mainly only in name. He's sort of he does his role and he does it decently, but he didn't sign on with the crew. It was more of a forced conscription of sorts from a previous job he had aboard a rather normal British frigate. So he sort of hasn't acclimated despite his time on the ship, and he really is just trying to keep his head down and do his job and make sure that nobody dies. It's actually kind of one of its bigger fears is that he won't do his job well enough, and people will die, or at least the people he actually cares about, which are few and far between, but still meaningful. Today, I'll be in the role of perspective to start, which is basically, again, like David said, I just kind of get a outside look in on the goings on of things and just where we might be headed and how to possibly prevent that or allow it to happen. And like Ben said, he's got a relationship with Hopper. He's one of the only people who doesn't treat him like crap, but his other bond, he has a duty to the ship's captain, strike that pirate queen, where she was the one who brought him on the ship, and he hasn't really forgotten under the circumstances in which that occurred, and so he harbors a bit of a grudge, but you'd never know from his rather he doesn't have a backbone, so doesn't really come out.
That's brilliant, thanks. And yeah, last but by no means least, Alex, if you could introduce us to our fearsome pirate queen.
Yeah, I'm Alex, and my character is Sonia Gale, the self-described pirate queen of Rubicon. She's charismatic and inspires some amount of loyalty, but she's more on the would rather be feared than loved side of things. And I imagine she inspires more fear than love. She is she's smart and good at what she does, but she's also recklessly ambitious, and really just wants to be the most feared pirate queen and commanding the most feared pirate ship on the Caribbean. And she has taken an inexplicable liking to Hernandez, and sort of immediately upon taking him from the last ship they raided, immediately just sort of promoted him to sailing master, and is just showing weirdly blatant favoritism for this guy.
Excellent, thanks very much. Right, so yeah, and a brief description of the Rubicon. So the Rubicon is a classic sort of pirate ship of a variety that I could describe if I knew the first thing about sailing. It's however, in recently, we're currently facing a few threats to the ship. These are mostly due to the recent actions in the area. So the threats we have are that there are some enemy warships who are outgunning us in the area. This isn't surprising. We've gained some notoriety as a pirate vessel, and the various navies of the Caribbean are all hunting us. As a result of this, we currently are lacking skilled hands in many roles on the ship, and the ship is also overdue for repairs. Last raid we were in was quite a bloody skirmish that was costly, both in terms of the ship and its crew. So what we're going to do now, and this is essentially the pattern that we will take for the rest of the game, is we'll take it in turns to frame a scene, which we will in which we will explore what we call a crossroads. And the crossroads is essentially a big decision that the ship as a whole is going to face. It's going to have to either do something or not do something, but it's always going to be a binary choice. That's always going to be an internal choice as well. It's not about whether something happens to us from the outside. It will be about what we do, which may be what we do about an external threat, but it is it's our decision to make, or importantly, it's whoever's in power's decision to make. The structure of the scenes is fairly straightforward. The only real restrictions are that a scene always has to involve a scene you frame always has to involve your character. You can't frame scenes for other people. You can obviously include other people in the scene you are framing, but you have to include your own character as well. You're not required to. The scenes can kind of be as short, really, as you want, and as long as it doesn't get boring. When a scene is concluded, the person who framed it will get to choose to tick off one of 3 checkbox lists that we have, which are either to move the ship towards crisis, which is either an internal or an external threat that could potentially destroy the ship as a whole, the ship and its crew. There is time passes, which is essentially when we hit time passes, there will be a period of time in which nothing much happens and we'll come back in. It's probably the least interesting one to deal with. And I think actually Ben does just not using it all the time in one-shot games, but I've put the thing out for it now, so we can if needed. The final and most important one is the crossroads itself. I said once we've defined what a crossroads is, we will tick off boxes on that as well. When that one is filled, we have to make that decision. Whoever is in power will make that decision, and we will have to live with the consequences of it. But we'll get onto that in due course. So to start, we need a player to frame the first scene. The first element of framing a scene is to read out the current crossroads. If we don't have a crossroads, then the player framing the scene gets to decide what our first crossroads is. Obviously, can take input on that. Does anyone wish to take the first scene? Either if there's no particular volunteer, we can either go in order through the spreadsheet, which would put Ben going first, or I can take the first scene if people want, and lead us through that. Ben, do you have a preference?
I don't have an idea for a scene, but I can go first if you like, and we can figure it out.
If you're happy to, then yeah, that's cool. I said I don't mind doing it, but at the same time, I like letting other people go first when I'm facilitating, so I don't,
okay, sounds good.
Override too much. So the first thing to do, like I said, we can kind of be a bit more. We can be a bit collaborative on this. The first thing to do is to determine our first crossroads. This will be, like I said, it has to be a decision that we will make. So it might be there is a Spanish treasure fleet. Do we attack it? Yes or no? It might be the Navy are coming for us. Do we stand and fight, or do we flee? It can be sort of anything, referencing our threats, referencing sort of the fictional situation once we actually get into play. Is there anything, Ben, that you think might be interesting to start with? And like I said as well, then if anyone else has any ideas I want to feed into this, that is more than fine.
I would like to play up the ambition of our pirate queen. So the idea that we'll come to a point where we need to decide if we're going to go into combat with our rickety, damaged vessel or flee to safer waters. That sounds great to me.
Yeah, that sounds good. So yeah, what do you think this will be more? I mean, kind of, I suppose sort of the two situations I sort of proposed. Do you think this is more we have spotted? We might encounter a prize for the taking, or that someone is actually coming for us? Do you think it's more? Do you think it will be more active or reactive?
I'd love to hear everyone else's feedback, but I do like the idea that, like, it sounds like we've been pirating for quite a while now. We're kind of run down, and we've been like pillaging, ravaging the coasts. So it makes sense that they would be kind of chasing us and coming to get us.
Yeah, I think that with what we're dealing with now, the fight or flee is a response rather than an action. So a reaction in this case. So I think it's not so much, oh, we're going to go out and do that, so much as are we going to actually confront this? And if we do, what's going to happen with that?
Yeah, Alex, are you?
Yeah, I'm happy to go with the more reactive. Yeah, I don't think I have anything really to add to that.
Yeah. So if we call it something like, I'm just going to go into the Crossroads and whatnot tab now, and I'll just type in a brief précis of it here. But it will essentially be when the pirate hunters catch up with us, do we stand up to them or flee? And I'll phrase that in the yes and no thing. So you'll see on the there are two columns under. There are two columns under yes and no. The reason those are there is because perspective can the perspective characters can basically make predictions about what they think will happen in the event of either of those happening, in the event of us fighting or fleeing. And those are essentially the only consequences that we're actually the only things that will definitely happen when we resolve a crossroads are those predictions that have been made. There's also a possibility for power to make some sort of conditional orders as well, but they largely work the same way. Cool. So yeah, Ben, if you want to frame a scene, as I said, you can pick any location you want and choose as many or as few characters in there. Also, feel free to bring in, like, if we need sort of, secondary characters, NPCs, what have you, we can bring those into a scene if need be. But obviously, NPCs can never have any of the sort of the player roles, so they can never really affect any change. But if you want to add any NPCs in for color, then again we can pick those up between us as needed. So yeah, the scene that you frame should in some way reference the impending crossroads. Obviously from a narrative point of view, we as players know that at some point pirate hunters are going to catch up with us. That's the thing. We as characters may not know that is certain, though it's likely we suspect it's in our future. So yeah, if you want to sort of frame up a scene that kind of addresses that conflict, and we can see where we go, and I'll take us through the kind of the mechanical bits as we do.
Okay, sounds good. I think I'd like to start the first scene in the galley. That's where Hopper is definitely most comfortable. I'd like to have a scene with Alder. I think it's probably around mealtime though. So if if anyone else wants to be in the scene, I'm sure there would be other crew members just hanging around eating as well. So if you wanted to jump in as another crew member, that would be totally fine. But I think that since we recently had this battle where we raided this enemy ship, the ship where we got our new crew member Hernandez. Obviously, there was some casualties, so I'm kind of just approaching Alder as he's eating, with the intention to kind of ask about how that was. I'm sure that it was kind of stressful for him having to deal with all the wounds and taking care of the crew and all that. So I'm kind of just approaching with that in mind. So I think you're probably Alder eating your meal, and I would probably just kind of come out of nowhere, maybe behind you. Alder.
Oh, gosh. Okay. Has anyone ever told you should just announce when you're going to show up? Because, I mean, thank God it's you, but I have no capacity for being surprised.
Sometimes I just like to see the look on your face.
I'm sure you do. What is this about?
You mind if I sit down?
Not at all.
All right. Takes a seat next to you. He's got a plate of some gruel looking whatever. Something delicious, I'm sure. How are you holding up?
Honestly, things... ask anyone else and things could be a lot worse, but things are not good. I'm used to handling, injured men and women with a whole other group of people to assist me. But this last raid, it hit us hard, and we're low on supplies, and it left us with more than a few casualties. And unlike previous times, it's definitely left us with much fewer capable hands, especially in certain important areas.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like anyone knows how to put a floorboard down anymore around here.
Oh, yeah, that does make more sense. I was wondering why I kept tripping. I thought it was just finally losing my edge. Okay.
Yeah, I heard Lewis, our carpenter, got hit with a stray bullet. Did he come by? Did he come by the infirmary?
He did come by the infirmary right before collapsing, and there was only so much I could do. He is alive, thankfully, but he's certainly not as handy as he once was.
Well, I'm sure he has you to thank for his life, anyways.
Yeah, I wish he'd see it that way too. Most people prefer to work with all of their limbs or nothing at all, and I prefer people staying alive, even if it means they're not as capable as they once were.
Mm-hmm. Have you talked to anyone else on the crew recently?
Yes, of course I have. I've talked to just about everyone in some manner of speaking, although most of the time it's just them ragging on me.
Well,
no,
everyone's got their place, right?
Yeah, I just wish it wasn't all higher up on food chain. No offense. I know you make the food. I don't know if we're going to be able to take another hit like this. We're getting bolder when we should be getting more cautious.
Yeah, I don't know if I've talked to anyone that thinks we can handle another fight like that.
Have you talked to the captain?
No, she doesn't. She doesn't eat her meals down here for some reason. I don't get much opportunity to talk to her.
That's fair. I mean, I'm able to be a little bit more open because of that. But that being said, things are not looking good. And I know we're on the run, but we need to find a way to find some sort of safe haven, or else we're sitting ducks.
Well, at the very least, we can't keep eating this slop every day. We need some kind of fruit, meat, literally anything.
Yeah, no, I'd agree with that. Although it worries me if it's come to the point that even you are disparaging the food.
Hey, I do the best I can.
No,
I'm not down on myself.
I appreciate that. You're one of the few people who knows exactly what he's good at and nothing less. So I appreciate it. But we should maybe consider talking more freely about the possibility of getting to safer waters. I don't know where safer waters are these days. I had a different idea of safe before, but we should consider our options.
Now, Alder, don't get it in your head that you should go talking those kinds of things around the crew.
I mean,
I agree with you, but you're going to get tossed overboard real quick if you start speaking out like that.
No, I know, but I don't know. Sometimes I forget how things are. And I don't know. It's easier to talk to someone who just gets it. And isn't going to throw me overboard for saying things like this.
Well, keep your head up anyways. The crew needs a happy face when they're facing losing a limb.
Are you suggesting that you should be the surgeon instead? I haven't smiled in weeks.
Do your best, Alder. I know you can.
Same to you, Hopper. Let me know if things change. I'd rather hear it from you than from a bunch of injured crewmen.
Absolutely.
Cool.
I think that's it.
Yeah, I'm just going to jump in with a couple of little mechanical bits here.
Sure.
So, firstly, on the rolls, with the I know I've discussed this, but just to sort of go over it again, with the role of touchstone, essentially, whenever you kind of express opinions and feelings and emotions and stuff as the touchstone, you're sort of also, that's essentially, that also acts as a gauge on the crew as a whole. So just kind of the things I sort of picked up on in there is, I think there might be what probably translates into the crew as, whilst there may not necessarily be fondness for Alder, there's certainly there is an appreciation of his talent and dedication, sort of thing. Even if people don't show it, they I think that's kind of something I think probably is going on in the crew. And also there is very definitely dissatisfaction amongst the crew about the quality of food and provisioning that's currently available to them. That is definitely ticking away. From the point of view of the touchstone, so of the perspective, so of Alder in this scene, you get to make, when stuff that you say, you can choose to make a prediction. The thing I specifically picked up on you saying there was that you weren't sure that we could, you weren't sure how well we would fare in a if we had another fight, like that one we had before. So do you want to make that an official prediction? Do you want to say, if we fight, we will suffer severe casualties, or something along those lines?
Yeah, I think to edit it ever so slightly, just because I think I was saying it more in character and I wasn't quite fully realizing my role. I think that if we get into another skirmish, in general, we'll survive, but it will be far more unlikely for us to actually get to where we need to go. In this case, safer waters, which would lead to better food, repair of the ship, and everything. So I think if we get into another skirmish, we only have so few of those left to take.
Yeah, that's good. So if you just want to summarize that in the yes column on the crossroads thing, and if you put your character name next to it as well, that basically becomes relevant if to show that you control that prophecy, because that's relevant when we actually come to resolve the crossroads. But that's cool. And yeah, as I say, you don't have to necessarily spell out exactly what the prediction is in character, as it were. We can sort of have these little regroups at the end just to kind of reiterate those points. That's cool. So the next step with the end of the scene is that Ben, who framed the scene, you get to tick a box on either the crossroads thing, if you felt like the scene kind of moved us towards a decision on the crossroads. You can click on time passes if you don't think anything really happened, or you can tick crisis if you think that we are drawing closer to some sort of internal or external conflict. As touchstone, you can always tick crisis if you want. You can also untick crisis if you want, but currently there are no ticks in crisis, so that's not relevant.
Okay. I definitely want to tick crisis. I'm wondering if I should tick crossroads as well as crisis.
Yep. Also, just to make it clear, you can, if you wish, tick crisis twice as well as the touchstone. The touchstone actually has a lot of power to make things very, very difficult when they want. but like I say, I also agree that I think that scene did very much feel like it was dealing. It definitely felt like there was a consensus there on what you both thought of the future. So crossroads would perfectly make sense too.
Okay, I'm going to do that. I'm going to take crisis once and crossroads.
Excellent. Now the next. Sorry, just muted myself halfway speaking. As the next thing we will do is everyone can, if they wish, have a very short reaction vignette to that scene. It should just basically be a couple of lines, just no interaction with other players, just a little scene of your character and how this sort of change in feeling amongst the crew maybe. The prospects of another fight make your character feel what they think. This is also an excuse if you want to make any more use of your powers, your role powers. Then you can also do that from this vignette. So, for instance, you can only essentially use your powers once in your vignette, though, because it's a very small scene. So, for instance, Peter could make another prediction, or I can make another prediction. The captain could give one specific order. And yeah, obviously Touchstone can tell us more about what the crew is doing. You don't have to if you don't want to. I think I am going to frame a short vignette after that scene where we see Hernandez is up in the rigging himself, he's kind of checking the tension on some of the lines, and he's got another sailor with him. Probably looks scarcely more than a boy, to be honest, and he's showing him how to tie off this rope. Though it's obvious the young sailor hasn't really got it fully yet, and he's having to kind of repeat it a couple of times. And I am going to make a prediction in the flee sign, and I'm going to say we will suffer some casualties as we can't outrun due to experience. That's probably we're still not quite in a position we want to be at. I will, like I said, I think if we will work through an order in the spreadsheet now makes sense. So I'll take the next, I'll frame the next scene. The other thing I just want to add, we can. So obviously we've got the crossroads looming. So that what happens in that crossroads is always a thing that is going to happen, potentially happen. But we can frame scenes. So, for instance, we could have a scene where we actually go and pick up fresh supplies and stuff. That isn't necessarily blocked by the fact that this crossroads is looming. All that it is that we can't do anything that would prevent that crossroads from happening. And that's obviously the way that, like, for instance, if we go and get supplies, maybe the crew will be happier, and that'll change things. But so for my scene, I think I'll just quite simply go for sort of the mirror one, and have a scene where Hernandez is consulting with the captain. I think they're both at the helm of the ship. Sort of the helmsman's manning it, and Hernandez has been consulting with the captain about sort of their course, their destination, all that sort of thing.
How are we looking, Mr. Hernandez?
Truthfully, Captain, not great. It's
not great.
You've got some good men on the ship, do not get me wrong. But they're shaken from the losses they've had. They're not working as well as they could. There's damage to the ship. There's just not enough hands to get everything done that we need to get done.
Yeah. Do you have a proposed solution to this problem?
I'd say we need to find somewhere to dock up, get people some proper rest in, get some repairs run on the ship. I'd know I'm still new to the crew. I don't know them well, obviously, but if we don't have some respite, I worry their morale may not hold if we end up in a fight.
Have you seen what Mr. Hopper has been serving in the galley lately, Mr. Hernandez?
I have hardtack, a lot of it.
We're pirates, Mr. Hernandez. We thrive by taking. I don't see how holding up in safety is going to get us anywhere.
As you say, Captain, it's your ship, your crew. I'm happy to serve you, and serve you I will. I can only say what I see from my perspective.
And I want to hear you out. I like you. You seem a lot smarter than most of these rabble. Pity you can't. Pity you're not a surgeon.
I know my ropes.
That you do, Mr. Hernandez. And we're very grateful for it. Do you think we're running out of food, Mr. Hernandez? We need to strike somewhere soon. Do you think the crew can handle that?
I think they'll follow you, Captain. I do.
As well they should.
How well they'll bear up, that we'll have to see.
How about the ship itself?
If we see action, like with my old ship, with the Espinosa and her escort, wouldn't rate it. Something small, merchantman, it'll hold.
Okay. I think the crew are going to need to man up. And I think we'll all feel better once there's some food, good food in our bellies.
Can't argue with that, Captain.
Find me the nearest small merchant vessel. We set course.
I'll have the
as soon as possible.
I'll have the men in the top sails keep a weather eye out, Captain.
All right. I think that's a scene.
Yep, I think so. I think I think there's only one thing there in there that I want to make prophecy, which is that I think if we fight, the morale of the men will break. Actually, I'm just thinking how I want to phrase it because I don't want to step on. I'm going to say that if we fight, some men will refuse to fight, and that will impede our yeah, that's I think how I'll put it. There'll be dissent essentially amongst the crew that might have to be dealt with. For my I think I'm actually also going to move us closer towards the crossroads. That it felt like we had a fair sort of discussion on that again. Yeah, and that's oh, Sorry, I should have given other people a chance to do reactions after the last scene. That was my mistake. But yeah, if anyone has a reaction they want to do to the scene, then feel free to do so.
I do have one quick thing. I think it's just, I think especially after kind of the meta realization that I think people do appreciate Alder's work, they might not show it. I think there's just one instance where I think Alder's walking from the mess hall to his work area and ends up passing by Lewis from earlier. And, Alder's kind of, he's not really happy about how things went, but he's also kind of like, well, I saved you. And he makes the briefest eye contact. And as he passes by, it looks like Lewis is actually a little bit more appreciative than he was, but Alder just thinks it was like a trick of the light, and so he just kind of keeps moving.
I think I'd do a quick scene in reaction. I think we're back in the galley. We're looking from the perspective of Hopper as like two crew members are sitting eating their gruel and just kind of talking, and Hopper overhears one of them saying, "Did you hear? The Queen's looking for another fight. Can you believe it? I haven't eaten a good meal in weeks. She wants us to go fighting." The other one's just shaking his head. We're not ready for this. She calls herself a pirate queen. Call her a mad queen. The other one just, you better keep that to yourself. Hopper just kind of shakes his head, turns away. That's it.
Alex, do you want to? I'm good, I think, but
yeah, I think I'm. I mean, I think what. I think. I think like the sort of reaction that Cap would have would essentially be set up for the next scene, which I would frame as essentially talking to the entire crew, saying, "Hey, this is what we're doing. Yeah, you found a Hernandez found a merchant ship ripe for plunder. Get some proper food, and basically telling the crew that that's what we're doing."
Cool. Yeah, in which case, actually, I will sort of, add in a little reaction there, which is sort of a, in fact, it will be the same young sailor as before. He will kind of give the call that the ship's been sighted. He'll pop down to sort of deliver his report to Hernandez, and Hernandez will kind of do this slightly, but he'll reach into like his sort of knapsack thing he's got with him and pull out a slightly, battered and bruised apple that he gives to the boy as he goes to sort of report to the captain. And then Alex, it's your turn to frame a scene.
Yeah, so I would like everybody for this scene as well. Like, I think she's calling the entire crew essentially to the main deck. Except for the ones that like really can't leave their stations for ship reasons. I don't think like it's not a mealtime or anything. So I think it's pretty much everybody should be there on the main deck. At least that's how the captain wants it.
Yeah, that sounds cool.
Everyone, Our wonderful sailing master, Mr. Hernandez, has found us a ripe new opportunity. We're going to have food in our proper food in our bellies soon enough, everybody. So, be at the ready. Prepare yourselves. Any questions?
I think I'd like to be just like a random sailor. Just kind of shout out, how do we know Hernandez isn't leading us into a trap?
Would I lead you into a trap, Mr. Dawes?
Well, no, ma'am, but...
And I think real quick, I think Alder just kind of nudges him and goes, "Don't respond. It's not worth it."
Just shakes
Did
his
you
head.
have something to say, Mr. Alder? I thought not. Anybody else? Mr. Hernandez has been nothing but an asset to this ship since he was brought on board. I'd advise you all to treat him with the respect he is due. It's been a lot more useful than a lot of you. And she looks at Alder directly.
Hernandez is kind of going to shuffle forwards at that point and say, "Captain, if it pleases you, I'd be happy to volunteer to lead the boarding party aboard the ship if that will help convince the men of my reliability."
Well, sounds like a good idea to me, but I'm not the man to be convinced. What do they think?
I think another crew member speaks up. I don't need that man leading us. We can lead ourselves, ma'am.
I respect that. Then you'll be the one to lead.
I'd be happy to.
All right? Hey, cheer up, men. We'll have proper food, proper drink soon enough. Yeah?
I think Alder just mutters under his breath, "Great, so when are we going to get a proper crew?"
Sorry, what was that, Mr. Alder? I couldn't quite hear you.
I was just saying it is our honor and duty to serve you.
Somehow, Mr. Alder, I don't believe that.
Somehow, my queen, I'm not surprised. And then Alder realizes what he said and just goes, "I mean, I hear someone calling me below deck." And then just leaves.
Looks like our surgeon was about to show his spine for a minute there. That's all, unless there are any more questions or comments. No? Back to your stations.
Cool. So I will just pop in again here briefly, just to sort of reiterate, as is probably fairly self-evident, but there aren't any, specific like procedural rules or anything like this for anything like combat. We just, we can narrate raiding the ship as we choose to, and that's fine. Essentially, characters can't die, can't really be taken out of the game, unless we can, if you feel like it would make sense for your character to be killed off or whatever, then you can choose to do so and then bring in a new character as you see fit. But that's just to make that sort of abundant. And then Alex, if you want to mark the relevant box on the checklists, and we can then see about if anyone has any reaction scenes to that.
Yeah, I'm marking Crossroads box because I think thought that went pretty well, didn't you?
So I think if we're going off of Alder's reaction, I think this is immediately after his very brief spine moment, and I think he's sort of run down the ship's stairs in a frenzy, kind of like running to the aft cabins where his room is, and he just like literally beelines to his room, shuts the door, and like the look on his face is one of just sheer like, oh my god, what did I do? What did I do? What did I do? And like, to anyone else outside, it's like you said one thing, like you're not going to get thrown overboard, and his whole world is like, oh god, oh god, oh god, oh god, I wish I'd said nothing. Why did I have to say that? And it's just this big, like he has to actually take a few minutes to like remind himself to breathe and calm down before exiting the room and returning to his workstation.
Cool. So I think there's going to be a reaction scene from Hernandez. He's it's just a quick shot. He's sort of sharpening like one of those long, halfway between a sword and a knife sort of thing, kind of like a machete. It's obviously used as much as a tool as a weapon kind of thing for him. He's sort of sharpening that, making it ready. You sort of see him go over to the guy who's going to be leading the raid, and sort of essentially saying that he'll sort of follow him and whatnot. And I think I actually want to make a prediction off of this, which is essentially that if we do fight, for all that it will be hard, it will inspire the crew and bring them together, because they clearly sort of thrive on action. I think we kind of got that. I kind of got that impression in that last scene.
Is it all right if I go ahead and make a prediction as well? Okay, so I think that as a response to that, there's kind of this newfound, or not necessarily newfound, but rekindled faith in the Pirate Queen. She seems to be making some strong decisions, and it looks like things are going to turn out well. So I think that the prediction is that if we flee that fight for the Crossroads, there will be a heavy hit to the morale of the crew, because I think the last thing that they want after this sort of decisive moment is to just go back to the uncertainty of everything that, you know, has kind of been putting them down. So just to summarize, you know, if we flee, it'll be a heavy hit to morale.
Okay, I want to do a quick reaction as well. I think after the speech on the deck, there's a good amount of the crew that are still grumbling. They're still unsure. They're basically just hungry. And I think Hopper just kind of starts to walk among the crew and gives a little bit of a speech, probably talking about the feast that they're going to have. Like, when you men get back from this ship and you bring back those crates of fruits and dried meats and salted fish, oh, we're going to eat and we're going to drink. And I think he brings the morale up, gets the men a little fired up for the approaching battle.
Awesome. Alex, did you have a reaction you wanted to make, or are you good?
No, I think the Queen is good. Queen said her piece.
Perfect. In which case, it is Peter. It is your turn to frame a scene.
All right. So I think the scene that I want to frame is the very raid that we're going to do on the merchant ship in order to get all the food and supplies and everything. And I think although that other sailor is now in charge of the expedition, I think Alder convinces him to that Alder should come along in order to make sure that we can either also collect medical supplies, or possibly even one or two other men or women who understand surgical things. In that case, we might actually be able to save more people. He hasn't run it by the captain, per se, or the Pirate Queen, just kind of does it, you know, he doesn't want to face off directly, but he does think that if there's a little bit more coverage in sort of the med bay, then everything's going to go a lot smoother. And I think for this scene, I think I'd like to go ahead and also have both Hopper and Hernandez. I think Hopper's there to make sure that we're collecting all the food and supplies available. And I think Hernandez is there. I think even though he wasn't in charge necessarily, I think he's still there to show the rest of the crew that he's capable and competent and reliable. Whether that works or not remains to be seen. So I think, you know, the scene starts off. I think as it's, I think the majority of the scene actually takes place on sort of the boats that are just making their very short route to the other ship, and you know, as they continue, they board. But I think, you know, Alder is sitting next to Hopper, just kind of like muttering under his breath, "Don't look over, don't look over, don't look over," just because he understands underlyingly that Hopper does not like the water. And so this is a rare thing, but he's convinced him like this might actually be to everyone's benefit. So just, you know, this is basically routine. We're not going to die, but we need to make sure everything is accounted for.
Yeah, I think Hopper has his eyes closed, his hands in his lap, and he's kind of rocking a little bit and probably whispering a little sea chanters.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hernandez will sort of be sat in the boat. He's kind of looking over, and he'll kind of glance back and merchantmen like this, I'd give 2/3 odds that they'll surrender without putting up a fight at all. It's not worth their time.
No, but it does seem like it would be worth ours, but also particularly yours. You do seem well. Obviously, you're newer, but you seem to be handling things slightly better than some of us who have been here longer.
I've usually been on the other side of these transactions, but I certainly know my my way with them. So, Doctor, you spilled blood outside of a surgery before?
A few times. It wasn't my cup of tea. Decided it was better to save lives than end others.
A noble goal for sure, and as I say, hopefully today will be no different.
Yes, well, I don't think the captain necessarily agrees with my not wanting to kill policy. I'm not as helpful in a fight. Sometimes I'm not as helpful as I should be in the surgeon's quarters, but I do what I'm capable of.
If we had more crew members, they wouldn't be sending our goddamn doctor and cook over in the middle of a battle.
Yeah, well, if you must know, I don't think they would have sent us over if they knew we were coming over. This isn't exactly sanctioned. But then again, we're pirates. What is sanctioned?
Perhaps we'll get a few join us from the crew. Help bolster our numbers a little.
Yeah, I really hope so. I'm getting rather sick of seeing other men and women die of things that should be easily curable. And I think as he says that, a shadow casts over the boat. You look up and the other ship is now as close as it gets with boarding, and I look over and I just kind of, just kind of glance up, glance back, and just go, well, now or never, I suppose. And in a surprising amount of stability, he just kind of assists with boarding and everything. I think there's a certain level of competency that he has when he's not around the captain. Pirate Queen. I'm always going to say captain first. But I think he's actually handling himself with some sort of, air of confidence that is actually rather unusual. Unless anyone else has anything to add, I think it kind of goes off without a hitch. and that's the scene.
Cool. So we'll come on to reactions in a second. I just want to get a quick feel from the table. Do you think that this goes peacefully? I mean, like I said, we can explore it in more detail in people's reactions if we want, or do you think that it does sort of devolve into a bit more of a scrap?
You know, now that I think about it, I think when I say it goes off without a hitch, it goes off about as normally as these things go, which means the first 2/3 of it actually seem to go rather peacefully. And it looks like everybody's going to get everything they need. And there's even one or two men who are willing to come along who actually have some medical experience. They're coming begrudgingly, but I think they're, more willing to survive than they are willing to start a fight. But I think that in some of the collecting and exchanging, I think there's an accident that happens and there's a gunshot that goes off, and no one's sure who shot what, but it kind of turns what was supposed to be a normal routine thing into a rather, frenzy.
Yeah, that sounds good. Do you want to check off a box as you feel appropriate on the?
Yeah, so I just want to, because obviously we've been putting quite a bit in Crossroads. I'm simply trying to determine the difference between Crossroads and Crises.
So Crisis is if we fill up the Crisis track, then essentially a disaster will befall the ship, which may in fact destroy the crew. The way we handle that is essentially with a vote when it comes down to it, but it is possible for the crisis to essentially end the game if everyone thinks, or if a majority of people, I'd have to double check on the rules, if everyone thinks that crisis would actually end the end it. It's the crisis is essentially our bad ending track. If we get that, it's something dramatic and fairly terminal will happen. So it might be a mutiny on the ship. It might be that we get ambushed or whatever. But something will happen that's not good. We'll determine that when we get to it.
Okay, then I'm going to go ahead and actually just put 1 in Crisis.
Yeah, that makes sense because we whilst the raid itself may have been kind of successful, it's not really that relevant to the overall problem we're facing. If anything, it's escalating. So that's fine. If people want to have some reactions.
Yeah, I'd like to have sort of a before 2-part reaction, like one just a brief reaction of while the raiding party is out, the captain, queen, whatever. I don't think she cares as much as people think she cares. Running around the ship saying like, where the fuck is our surgeon and also our quartermaster?
Oops.
And then when Alder comes back with medical supplies and a couple more medical people in tow, no less, I want just sort of she comes up to him and says, nice initiative, Mr. Alder. Good job. Don't ever do that without telling me again. And then she...
Yeah, I think just as a reaction vignette playing right off of that, I think, Alder's terrified of what she's going to say. And the fact that praise comes before anything, he actually freezes and doesn't have a response, because he's like, she hasn't insulted me or chewed my head off. I'm actually very confused at what's happening. And so he just kind of sits there, not even stands there. He's just, and then he turns to the men he's got and he just goes, right, business as usual then, and then just guides them to the quarters. And he's like, okay, I didn't die. I have a bad feeling about this.
I don't think I have much reaction on Hopper's side. I think it would be cool probably to see a scene of after the fighting of Hopper just being terrified the whole time and probably, hiding behind something. But then after the battle, going down and actually finding oh yeah, there's a whole bunch of food or something down below, and just being really excited.
Yeah, so I think my scene is actually going to be sort of during the boarding action, and I think Hernandez is sort of it's after the crew on the deck and stuff have been subdued, and Hernandez is sort of doing a sort of inventory tour with one of the crewmen of the ship we're raiding. They kind of get to one of the to a cabin door. It's locked, and sort of Hernandez barges it open. There's a sort of guy in sort of fancy clothing there who sort of fires a pistol shot that goes nowhere. And Hernandez just sort of goes in and slams him back with sort of his machete blade. And he looks back at the other crewman, who just sort of gives a big shrug, and Hernandez just finishes him off.
Sweet.
Cool. Yeah, so go ahead.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think I should go ahead and make a prediction. So I think that after this last skirmish and everything, and after being able to rally everything together with the crew a little bit closer, I think. Well, okay, so here's my question. Is there a way to perhaps edit a previous prophecy that I've made?
So I will double check on that. The short answer is there is, when we get to the when we get to resolving the crossroads, as if assuming that you are still perspective when that happens, you get to choose whether or not each prophecy that you have made comes true or not. You may be able to amend ones you've previously made. I just want to double check that.
Okay. I mean, I've only made the one in fight where it's the suffer severe but not fatal casualties, and I just think that now that we've got more crewmen aboard, some of whom might actually be more competent than the ones we've already had, in a fight, we will still suffer some losses, but I think we might actually band together more, as go ahead.
Yeah, no, so that's cool. So yeah, what you could do is make a new prophecy that we will bond together, what have you, and then when we get to resolve it, you can choose. Then you might choose, actually we don't suffer huge casualties and we do bond together more, or we suffered casualties, but those who survived bond together more, and whichever way around makes sense at the time. So that's one way of doing that.
Okay, cool.
Excellent. So we've all had a chance to frame a scene now. So I'm going to say if we take another 5-minute break, that's cool with everyone, and then we'll come back and it will be Ben's turn to frame a scene again. Hey, all. Just before we get back into it, I realised I completely forgot to mention the whole X card thing at the beginning of the game. I hope everyone's familiar with it anyway, but just in case you're not, obviously, if the X card is basically just a way of like stopping a scene. If there's something that either that kind of is uncomfortable for you to deal with, or even just that you think is tonally inappropriate or whatever. If you do need to use that, just either say is probably the easiest ones and most likely to notice, put it into chat, make some sort of hand signal in the screen. Though I sometimes lose track of the little bits down in the corner, so and we will stop and work around whatever's causing the problem. No need to explain why or whatever. I just need to know what. I think with Kingdom, because it tends to be a little bit more abstract than some other games, it doesn't tend to get quite as intense as some other games do. But obviously, if you do need to make use of it, then do. And apologies that I didn't bring it up at the beginning of the game. Likewise on sort of Lines and Veils stuff, if you think anything might come up that you don't want to deal with, just if you either put it into the chat here or directly message me or put it in the little spreadsheet, just let me know that you've done so. Sorry, yeah, I meant to obviously do that at the beginning, but I should have set myself a little checklist up, teething problems and all that. But anyway, let's get back into it. So yes, Ben, it's your turn to frame a scene again.
Okay, so I think my scene will be the aforementioned feast after the fight. So I think the scene will again take place in the galley, in the middle of the feast. I think my first question would be: would Sonya, the pirate queen, be present in
Hell
the
yeah.
galley? Yeah. Okay. Cool. So everybody's in the scene. I think we see it. I'm sure it's not a galley made to hold the entire crew at one time, but everybody's packed in. Probably no seating room, but everyone's kind of holding mugs filled with, some stews and delicious ales and whatever else we were able to pillage from the ship. Maybe somebody has an instrument and there's some music playing. Who knows? Probably just a lot of ruckus singing. It's extremely loud in here, sweaty, but the mood of the crew is markedly different than we saw in any scene previous to this. I mean, half because they're all completely drunk at this point, but they're all pretty happy with the spoils. And even just getting that success was pretty huge for them. So maybe Hopper would find himself next to Sonya at some point. Well, this all turned out for the best, didn't it? Talking to you, Alex.
Sorry. I told you, would I steer you wrong?
Well, you never lost my faith, Captain, but I'm sure the crew are happy to regain a little bit of that faith in you.
I'm happy for them to do that too.
Well,
a good meal you've cooked us up, Mr. Hopper.
Thank you. With the proper ingredients, I can do magic. So we've overcome this short-term problem, but the bigger picture still looms. You know, there must be some bigger ships just waiting to find us.
Of course there are, Mr. Hopper. There always are. But I feel confident now that we can take them.
you don't really think we can get in another big battle at this point?
This was the that we just had. Big battle. I trust in our crew, Mr. Hopper. Do you?
I trust the crew, but there's just some mountains that can't be overcome. I don't want to see this ship sink into the bottom of the sea.
Neither would I, Mr. Hopper, but we're pirates. If we're not going to pirate, we might as well be sunk, shan't we?
In my experience, pirating is good for so long, but you want to stop to be able to spend those hard-earned gold every now and then.
Right now, we don't have much in the way of gold to spend. Got food, and the crew's morale is up, but running won't get us anywhere.
Running will get us somewhere quiet where we can fix a couple of these holes in the hull.
Do you honestly think that the Navy won't chase us? Do you think we can outrun them?
I think we can hide.
Well, I'd love to hear your suggestion as for where we could do that, Mr. Hopper.
Why don't you ask your new best friend Hernandez? I'm sure he could find us somewhere cozy, to a beach somewhere, maybe a little cove. We can stick our little ship.
Yeah, I'm sensing some resentment, Mr. Hopper.
No resentment here, ma'am.
You know, it seems to me that you all think I want a bunch of yes men. But you know, Mr. Hopper, I respect a man a lot more when he's willing to speak his mind.
I think, actually, if I might interject, since we're all there, I think that is the point where, as you said earlier, we've all been getting suitably drunk. And I think this is the point where Alder, who nobody has really seen for some reason or other, stumbles over, and I goes, okay, you know what? This is going so well. But I have a few word choices for you. Choice words. Choice!
Put that finger down, Mr. Alder. What do you want to say?
What to say, what to do, where to go, how do we live? You know, that's it. That is just it. We did so well on this last run because, for the most part, they didn't really put up a fight. Guess what? The next one, we're probably going to be a lot worse off. We are probably going to be dealing with a much bigger fight. And let me tell you something. When it comes to fighting, the first crew I think of is not this one. It's also not the second, or the third, or the fourth, or the 17th. I think we're somewhere down on the low bottom of the list, honestly. I think we could possibly, now hear me out, just possibly, all die. Now I know what you're thinking.
Do you now?
See, I knew you were going to say that. I knew if I waited long enough, you were going to say that. No. Okay. My suggestion is let's just run for our lives. Because who better to outrun than a bunch of runners? Wait. I'm getting words confused.
We might our crew might fare better in a fight. And with the aftermath of a fight, were you more competent, Mr. Alder? But hopefully some of our new crew will pick up your slack. Still.
You're questioning my competence. Right. Yes.
Yes,
That's
Mr.
what this is
Alder.
all about. Okay.
No, Mr. Alder, I'm not questioning your competence. I am outright denying its existence.
Yeah.
It would be lovely if our new crew up your slack because you were in the brig.
And I think at that moment,
But
Alder...
if that is how it has to be, that'll be how it has to be.
I think at that moment, that specific moment, sobers Alder up a bit. And yet, when it sobers him up, I think he's... kind of looks over at Hopper. What do you think?
I think maybe I should take you and go get another drink elsewhere.
Get him a bucket as well. I don't
Yeah.
believe our surgeon can hold his liquor.
And I think he grabs Alder before he can put his, his foot in his mouth again.
And Alder's like, and I don't think, and he's gone.
And I think as they're walking away, Hopper just kind of looks over his back. You do love to have people speak their minds to you, don't you, Captain? And he just turns and walks away.
There's still a chain of command, Mr. Hopper.
And I think you just hear Alder muttering under his breath, like, I could kill her.
He elbows you in the stomach.
Ow! Oh, that tickles.
That wasn't too harsh, was it, Mr. Hernandez?
No, Captain. The man's drunk. He'll make some mistakes, but I'm sure he'll regret them in the morning. So.
Oh, I'm sure as well. Mostly just want to put the fear of God in him, you know?
Sure thing.
Don't mind when a man speaks his mind, but they best do it with respect.
I'll bear that in mind, Captain.
I bet you will. And Queen Sonia just takes another big swig of the mead or whatever she's drinking. Ale. What kind of noise is that? That was weird. Anyway.
Cool.
That's scene.
It feels like singing to me, yeah.
Yep.
Awesome. So yeah, Ben, you're to check your boxes, and then we can go around and do some reactions.
Cool. I think I'm going to check a crisis box. I think the crew is in much better spirits, but we're not in any way dealing with the looming issue that's at hand. So I'm going to tick a crisis, but I'm also going to tick a crossroads because we're slowly moving towards that impending doom.
Excellent.
So, I think in terms of reactions, I think Alder does does feel it in the morning. He really isn't used to holding his liquor. He doesn't usually drink that much. I think even originally it wasn't really his idea to drink. He actually was like, I'll just have whatever isn't alcoholic. And one of the crewmen is just like, here you go, and just hands him a thing, and it's alcohol. But he doesn't check it. He's just like, okay, fine. And he drinks it. So I think in the morning he has some major regrets. But despite that, I think there's a little idea that's kind of seated in his mind that despite him being drunk, a lot of what he said was kind of how he felt. And so starts to be a little bit of a plot forming in the back of his mind. And I'll leave it at that.
Cool. So yeah, I'm going to have a quick reaction with Hernandez. It'll just be sort of that evening as the party is sort of maybe winding down a bit, and Hernandez is just sort of sat on one of the capstans. Is that the word I mean? One of the big bits that you 12 rope around on the deck. And he's sort of sat on there noodling some sort of Spanish guitar with a few sailors sort of sat around nursing their sort of last drinks and sort of tapping their feet and stuff along to the music.
Cool. Alex, did you have a reaction?
Yeah, I think it's just a brief, like, a shot of Sonia in her cabin, collapsing on her bed, and just sort of looking pensive.
Okay. I don't think I need to do one for Hopper.
Cool. So it's my scene now. I think actually I just want I was considering sort of pushing hard on the crossroads, but I think actually I'd quite like to have a scene with Hopper first. So yeah, I think this will be I think maybe I'm just wondering if I want to stick to the galley again or take it somewhere else. I think actually it's up on the deck sort of thing. And I think the weather's calmed a little. And Hernandez is running a few like fishing lines off the bow. As Hopper's sort of out on deck, he kind of waves him over. Hopper, that was grand feast you had for us last night. Thank you again. It's good to see what you can do when you've got the ingredients to hand. I thought I'd see if I could get a bit of fresh fish. Not much, but everything helps, right?
Nothing like a like a freshly caught fish, that's for sure. And it was my pleasure. There's nothing I like more than to see the crew happy like that.
You certainly seem to have their ear. I'm not not questioning your skills as quartermaster. Is it what you wanted out of this? You have a good eye for the men. Did you ever want to do more with it? With no disrespect to our captain, of course.
I just wanted to see the world, to be honest, and killing people wasn't of much interest to me, and I never quite had a hand for the sails or the cannons. I've always enjoyed having a good conversation, and the men just appreciate that because you don't get that very often on this ship.
Too right.
Other than that, I don't think there's another place for me on this ship other than the galley. You know, our captain, she has some flaws, but
who amongst us doesn't?
Exactly. I think what we need right now is someone like her, but if she could just get over that ambition of hers for a week, we might be able to put ourselves back together again.
If we could just get a bit of respite, I don't doubt we could make life a little easier aboard the ship.
I'm afraid the whole British Navy must be on our tail by now.
They'll be getting closer by the day. It's like they always say, they only need to get lucky once. We need to get lucky every morning.
That's the pirate's life.
And I think there'll be a twitch on the line. He'll sort of haul up a fish of some variety. Red snapper. There we go. And sort of brain it on the side of the ship. So, well, Hopper, here's a start anyway, and let's hope there's more good fortune in the next few days.
Thank you for that, Mr. Hernandez.
Cool. And I think that's probably seen. So one thing I'm going to do is make a prediction, which I didn't quite voice in the scene, but it was kind of the impression I got, which is that if we flee, we will get we will make a clean break and get some time for respite, sort of thing, before we're caught again, or before we're at risk of getting caught again.
Okay. And I think what I was speaking to a little bit was the crew's feeling like they're beaten down and they're battered, but they still have faith in their captain.
Cool. I think in light of that, I'm probably it's the least interesting one, but like I said, I didn't want to drive. I still wanted to get another scene in before I sort of drove more hard on the crossroads. So I'm just going to tick time passes for that one. Cool. So does anyone have any reactions I want to do to that scene?
Nothing for Alder.
Cool. Again, I won't. Ben, Alex, do you have anything?
No reaction. I was gonna ask, sort of, like, what does it represent fictionally when the final box for Crossroads or whatever is ticked? Like, what is the next step there?
Yeah, so there's then sort of a little sequence to work through to resolve it, but largely what that means is that essentially that's kind of the crunch time for that decision. That decision has to be made. So in this case, that will be we will be attacked by the British fleet, and we will have to make a decision whether to stand and fight or flee. And then, as we resolve the consequences from that, it will dictate how we come out of that sort of thing.
Okay.
I will also say probably at this point, when we resolve when we resolve either the Crossroads or the Crisis, which both seem the most likely to happen next, we will probably end it after that, because that's the point where we have a choice to make that decision, and we're sort of, well, we've still got sort of an hour of scheduled time, but yeah, that's probably will probably be a neat point to call it at that point. But with that said, Alex, it's your chance to frame a scene.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, damn, I'm still having trouble thinking of scene. I think I want Alder and Hernandez for this scene, and it will be, let's put it in the captain's quarters. I think the captain, Queen, wants to get like their sober assessment of the situation.
Sure thing.
The state of the men, and in terms of the state of the ship, and like how are the men doing physically, and how is our medical surgery situation? How are the new crew getting along?
Yeah. Sorry. We've got some more able seamen after that last ship. The experienced ones tend to know which way the wind's blowing as when it comes to their loyalties. We still aren't working as well together as a crew with so many some new joiners in there, but so we may not be as fast as responsive as we would under other circumstances, but we're better, and we're in a better position all around than we were a week ago.
Okay. Mr. Alder.
We're doing much better off than we were before the last raid. Honestly, the other two members of my team now are acclimating as best they can. I think they were a little bit on the fence coming in, but I think the feast actually helped to ingratiate them a little bit, if only because they didn't step out of line. And I think that overall, things are actually being handled better than expected. Now, I do, with a level head, I want to make clear, with respect, doing better off than we were isn't saying a whole lot. If only because we were pretty low to begin with. I don't want to I want to impress upon you the severity of our circumstances, as well as hopefully realize that while we are better off, it's still, I think, if we were to face something of a larger ship, better equipped than us, we would, one way or another, it will hit us hard. And the only way to prepare for that is to acknowledge that we should not underestimate anything that comes before us. We are pirates, but we have been pirates for this long because we have survived.
I concur with Mr. Alder. If we made a true warship, we have a fighting chance now, but that's all we have, a chance. It'll be hard on us if we pull it off.
Yes, I expect it will be. But then, that's my job, isn't it? To push you all to be the best you can be. Afraid we may not have much of a choice, gentlemen. So, no underestimating here. The ships after us are no laughing matter. But I don't believe that flight is an option in these circumstances. So, let's prepare yourselves.
Right, you are, Captain.
Yes, Mum.
Okay. Good work. Keep it up. And let's hope for a few more days of smooth sailing.
Let's hope.
And I'd call that scene, and then I want to mark a crossroads.
That's fair.
I wanna.
Cool. So, just before you do that, I do want to make sort of something I kind of alluded to in that one without coming out and saying the words and being too kitschy about it. But I'm going to say if we do stand and fight, the Rubicon will become a legend in the Caribbean.
I would also like to make one in that case. I think that depending on how we fare in the battle, there is a small minority of the crew that may mutiny.
Sure thing. That's fair.
Can handle a small minority. It's fine.
Cool.
Oh, but let me be clear. That small minority will mutiny if things are going badly in the fight. So it'll basically be an attack on two fronts.
So yeah, no, I get that.
Clear. Right. Like, we'll survive in what form, that might be determined.
Sure
I've as a player, I fully understand how bad this decision that the cat is.
Okay.
But figure it's more interesting to push that than to do the sensible thing.
Okay. So, the process for resolving the crossroads. So the first decision we make is whether we want to end the game at this point. As I said, I think it probably makes sense for this to be the sort of the finale of the game, because we can resolve the crossroads and then have a little bit of an epilogue. I think we might be pushing it if we try and push any further on. So as long as everyone's cool with that, I think that's probably the best way to go. Next, I realize I've moved into one tab. So we set the stage for the the thing. So basically, this what I'll do is I'll read out what the decision is, and the wait, lost it. Yeah, so the crossroads. The decision is, when the pirate hunters catch up with us, do we stand up to fight to them or flee? So if we say that yes, we will fight them, the things we have on here are that we'll suffer severe but not fatal casualties. Some men will refuse to fight. Conflict will inspire the surviving crew and sort of fire them up. And yeah, so similarly from older of many survivors, the fight will bond together closer than ever. The Rubicon will become a legend in the Caribbean, but there is a minority of the crew that may mutiny if the fight goes poorly. So essentially, that's what happens if we stand and fight. If we flee, we will suffer some casualties that we can't outrun due to sort of inexperience amongst the crew that's still plaguing us. It will be disastrous for morale. It will suffer a heavy hit to morale. But we will get to safety with time to rest and repair. So that's sort of the crossroads we are facing. The sort of the weight of the decision that has to be made. So the next bit is the decision itself. So at this point, everyone with a power character declares whether they're making the kingdom decide yes or no on the crossroad. No one else gets a vote or a say in this at all. The only exception to this is that once they've made their decision, it is possible for someone to launch a challenge or overcome the captain, the power, I should say, who is the captain in this case. If that happens, we will go into detail on that. But so, Captain, what is your decision? Do we stand and fight, or do we flee? Yeah,
stand and fight. Yeah.
So does any? So I'll explain. I did mention these earlier, but because they haven't really come up, I actually don't see them used that often in the games of Kingdom I've played. I must admit, I always tend to be a bit slow on them myself. But there are two options here. So the first is to challenge that decision. So anyone can, if they wish, challenge the decision. They'll say, I'm going to challenge the captain's decision here. Can stop them from making it. You need obviously to justify how you are challenging in the fiction. At which point the captain will decide to one of three options they can make. They can say that yes, your challenge succeeds, and they change their decision to no. They can say that yes, your challenge succeeds if you do a certain thing. So say yes, but only if you agree that I get to throw you in the brig or something. Whatever conditions you feel like putting on there. in which case, again, the decision changes. The final option is at this point, the captain can just say, no, your challenge doesn't work, and I continue making my decision. That's fine. There is a second option, which is the nuclear option, which is overthrow. To do this, the challenging character, it works much the same way. Again, you have to show how you're doing, and you would change your role to power. Show how you do that. At this point, the defender can either say yes, your overthrow succeeds, and they have to change to a new role, or they can say yes, your overthrow succeeds if you again fulfill certain conditions, certain things happen, and again they'll then follow it. They cannot say no at this point. Basically, if you move to overthrow, then the person being overthrown is overthrown, unless they set costs that you are not willing to pay. And at that point, you can change the decision. So, with that in mind, does anyone want to challenge the decision? I'm going to say for myself at the minute that I do not believe the Hernandez still trusts in the captain. While he thinks this is a risky plan, he is going to stand by it. He also, even if he didn't, I don't consider him to be in a position that he could reliably challenge her. I am not going to make a challenge. Does anyone else wish to challenge or overthrow, or challenge and then overthrow? We'll see how it goes.
No, not Hopper. Hopper doesn't have aspirations to be captain, even if he disagrees with her.
So, right up until that last scene, I had a very different thing in mind. But after actually handling the situation with some respect and poise, I think for Alder, it's a no. I think he was planning something very different, and then that happened, and she didn't talk down to him. So I think the position is secure and the decision is made.
Excellent. So the decision stands. We stand and fight. We will. So the way this will essentially work now, because we are kind of now on rails, as it were. We will first go through. I don't believe Power's made any contingent orders, so that we can ignore that. We then go through and we will work through all the predictions on the We'll set a little bit of scene first, but we'll then go through each of the predictions and decide whether you think your prediction happens, and then you can narrate a very brief vignette describing something that supports that. This may be because you think someone has done something to stop that outcome from happening, or you just think maybe I was wrong. If we happen to get into a situation where we have two contradictory predictions, we have to work that out. But I don't think that's an issue. Again, at this point, people also can at this point challenge and overthrow perspective characters as well. If you disagree with them, if you don't want them to make a thing happen or whatever, you can also do that. That's perfectly legitimate. Sorry. So that's fine. And then basically we will get a final sort of reaction from the touchstone to see how the people as a whole do it, and then we'll just do a little bit of epiloguing at the end. So we'll just work through we'll work through the predictions in order. It makes as much sense as any. If I've gone into the wrong tab. Yeah. So the first one, Alder. Do we suffer severe casualties?
I think that prediction is flat out wrong. actually. I think that between the mutiny between the raid from previous and with the extra officers and everything, I think while there are certainly men on the ship who would be injured, I think there are now far fewer people who die as a result of their injuries.
Yeah, that sounds good. Yeah, so we probably do take quite a beating, but a lot more we get a lot more wounded people who survive the fight, rather than just outright being dead. That sounds cool. That's fair. So I will just to keep up on the. I will strike through that on the. Some men will refuse to fight. This is a tough one. I am going to say I think this one will stand. I think there will be some division amongst some members of the crew, and some of them will refuse to strike to quarters. There may be some ramifications for that coming down the line, but that they will. That there will be a small contingent that that do refuse to stand and fight. However, I also believe that conflict will inspire the surviving crew and fire them up. We successfully fend off, the frigate that was sent to bring us down, and this does inspire the men who fight. So Alder.
I think that
this is of the men who survived the fight. We will bond together closer than ever.
Right. I think that just even as a result of the previous prediction coming true, I think that's also true. Especially since more people survive than were expected, I think everyone draws closer together, and even more specifically, I think there's a little bit more appreciation, even more obviously, for Alder, who actually within the skirmish actually proves himself to be fairly reliable in all the stress and everything, because he's not having to cover so many people at once. He's actually surprisingly good at giving orders to the others and making sure that everyone, or most everyone, is taken proper care of.
Excellent. Next one is me again. So the Rubicon will become a legend in the Caribbean, and yes, I think it does. I think we see sort of a sort of wounded sailor drinking in a sort of dockside tavern in Port Royal, telling the tale about how their ship was fended off by the Rubicon. And then finally, Alder, there's a minority of the crew that may mutiny if the fight goes poorly.
Well, I think because the fight goes actually fairly well, it doesn't happen. There is a divisiveness that some men will refuse to fight. However, because the fight goes well, once things have calmed down, those crew are rather swiftly dealt with, and I will leave the how to our pirate queen.
Excellent. So that's all of the predictions sorted. So, I mean, to kind of sum up what we've had, we obviously we will have, and we can come back into this in more details of in a sec. So, obviously, we have been attacked by this frigate, and we fend them off in a surprisingly successful maneuver. That sort of brings certainly seemingly has brought the crew together. Yeah. So Ben, as our touchstone, and once again, we'll go to that. We can challenge and overthrow here, but I probably don't see it being that much of an issue. But so Ben, would you like to describe sort of how the crew feel in the wake of the fight with the pirate hunters?
Sure. I mean, I think we see a kind of renewed sense of camaraderie. For one, we had this completely divided crew for most of our story today, and now all these people that they've gathered from their voyages are now part of the crew officially. So we see this. Whoever's survived this battle is no one's going to question whether they deserve to be there. And everyone is, overjoyed, reinvigorated, still absolutely ready for some R&R. But I think we see this kind of like united pirate crew at the end.
Great. So the only thing left to do now is we'll just go in order again, I think, and we'll just reflect on our wishes or fears, and if we think those are still, I mean, obviously we won't be continuing playing, but just if we think those have been, if those have come to pass, if you think maybe your opinion on it has changed, if there's anything else to do with it. So, Ben, do you want to start with that?
Sure. Let's see. So my wish was we should spend all our time getting food, or we should spend more time getting food, which I was happy enough that we actually did some of that. And it's still, that's my MO, is trying to feed my crew. So it's still absolutely applicable. And my issue is of being afraid of drowning, which it's not something that I'm getting over anytime soon. So, I think for Hopper, it's just more of the same after this battle. He's happy enough that it went well, but his job is just going to continue the way it was.
Cool. So I'll go next, which my fear is I feel we'll end our day in the hangman's noose, or end our days in the hangman's noose. So I think that fear is probably not gone away. It's probably abated a little in light of our recent victory, but I think it's still his primary concern about the whole piracy affair is he does worry that there's no way out without without dying, sort of thing. His issue is he's a new recruit to the ship and doesn't have the trust of the crew. I actually feel like this was starting to come around a bit, so that's probably no longer going to be the issue. I think his relationship with the captain may still might be sort of the next big issue for him. I think there's still going to be some, not necessarily distrust of him, but some resentment maybe might be where that would end up going. And Alex.
Yeah, so my wish for the Rubicon to become the most feared vessel on the Caribbean. I don't think we're there yet, but I think we're getting there. I think Sonia is getting what she wants in terms of her own image. I think there's a great shot of her on the deck of the opposing ship during that fight, and she's holding two swords and another in her mouth, sort of thing. As for her reckless ambition, I mean, I don't think she has learned a single lesson from this entire affair, frankly. Not a one. So I think she is still recklessly ambitious, and she is only bolstered by this victory. That she may, get the crew some R&R for now. But she is going to keep pushing them. It probably will not end well. And yeah, that's what I got.
All right, that just leaves me. So Alder's fear was that everyone dies under his knife, and I think that was such a huge and general fear that it was just unrealistic to begin with. But I think while there's still that worry that people still might die, I think it's been seriously abated with the past couple of experiences. Simply with having more of a crew to rely on, and in the battle being able to handle himself with somewhat more poise, he's actually, less worried about that and more just, this is my job and I have to do it and I have to focus on it. His issue was almost no backbone whatsoever, and I kind of like that manifested itself in different ways. I think started to be dealt with a little bit here and there. I think the experience of being drunk, getting all that out and not dying somehow actually bolstered his confidence enough. And then I think it was just a matter of being treated with a modicum of respect from the queen. And I think she, her, not necessarily reliance, but her inquiry towards him of how things might play out certainly influenced his perspective and decision-making skills, and also just his bond with her. I think there's still that sense of duty he has, but I think he's a little bit more willing to follow through with it, and depending on how things would play out in the future, there might be a slightly more pleasant relationship there. I don't think they'll ever be on, completely friendly terms, but I think there's enough there that I think Alder isn't just, oh no, I'm trying to handle things the best I can, and more of, my decisions, my words have a certain amount of power behind them, and although he's not in charge, I think he's, even just a little bit of being in charge of the people that he now has to work with. I think he's got something of a backbone. I don't think he'd ever truly nod to it, but I think there's a growing confidence there, and it'd be interesting to see how that would grow.
Excellent. Well, thank you, everyone. So I think, I said if we just want to go around and just do a little epilogue scene each, maybe just to finish off with. Ben, are you okay to start again?
Sure. An epilogue scene. I think we would see, kind of just to reiterate on what I was saying before, probably see a similar scene that we saw at the start of Hopper in the kitchen. Probably has a few new knives or something. He's showing off a new pan that they stole from the ship as they were getting away or something. Just a little bit happier, still trying to just cheer on the crew a little bit, get their spirits up, passing around a bottle under the table or something. Just kind of like a lighthearted scene in the galley with Hopper.
I think mine's actually not going to be too dissimilar. So I think we see sort of a Hernandez is stood on the deck just sort of below the mainmast, and the young sailor that we saw earlier is up in the lines, doing the sort of knotting up there again, and he this time he sort of gets it right first time sort of thing. But you sort of see like Hernandez is obviously sort of like catcalling something up to him, and sort of leans over to the sailor next to him and kind of like elbows him, and they sort of share a laugh together about some joke, and yeah.
Could I go last, actually? Still trying to think.
Sorry, yeah, click the wrong button there. Yeah, no, actually, I was going to suggest maybe you went last anyway. It feels only proper that the captain should get the last say.
All right. Well, on that note, I think the little epilogue scene is Alder's moving through the mess hall, moving about to where we saw him at the beginning. But this time there are already other people sitting there, and I think it's a mix of the people that he works with and some other crewmen who've started to kind of grow to maybe not put up with him more, but like appreciate what he's doing. And he actually takes a seat next to Lewis, who just kind of looks over and nods. Alder just nods back, and there's like a hint of a smile, but I think everything, it's not perfect, but it's better.
And I think the epilogue, Sonia has started eating in the galley with the rest of the crew most of the time. And I think it's like it's a montage of that, and like having a drinking contest with some of the crew, and obviously beating them. And I think it's fairly similar in tone to the others, in that it's just sort of like camaraderie and friendship and revelry. And then it's like a sudden shift to her throwing somebody overboard. And then it's back to revelry. And I think that's sort of freeze frame the end.
Excellent.
Everybody's smiling.
I was going to say that the true meaning of piracy was the friends we made along the way.
Yeah. The true booty was friendship.
Yeah.
Oh God.
But no, that was brilliant. Thank you very much, everyone. I hope you enjoyed.
Thank you. It was great.
So I'm going to stop the broadcast in a sec, and then if people are happy to hang around and just do a quick like roses and thorns or what have you, and general debrief. Yeah, if not, obviously feel free to get off. But and yeah, so if anyone is watching this, then thank you for watching, and I'll attempt to stop the broadcast without dumping everyone out of the chat.